Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Let me dive in here. This might be a bit of a shorter episode, but I want to briefly discuss here at the top. Of course, voter ID and voter fraud is always on the docket here. It's something that's consistent, and it's a problem, of course, from state to state, as everybody knows, certainly with the business of mail-in ballots. And of course, what's going on right now in California as well. But I want to start off with this Joe Lang tweet real quick. I've read some of his posts in the past before. He was, of course, tied in with Q posts as well and analyzed a great deal of them over the course of time. And there's certainly an operation here taking place when it comes to voter fraud, because as I've been over basically again on the show here in the past, is that in 2016, the military knew that Hillary Clinton was going to try to steal the election. Again, they were using fraudulent computer voting and not counting votes and a number of other strategies, of course, late arrival ballots and the whole thing. And again, even back in 2016 for the presidential election, a great deal of people were voting in person and by hand because they didn't trust the machines. Many people, again, viewed the machines as being convenient and safe and XYZ. That, of course, has been proven, certainly in 2018, 2020, years after, to be proven true, is that you cannot trust these machines by any stretch of the imagination. So, again, I just want to read this particular post because it's pretty evident that there are endless individuals, again, who are involved in catching this fraud in real time, certainly from a surveillance standpoint and a military standpoint, hence the entire creation, I believe, of Space Force. And I'm not the only person who believes that. That's been analyzed in certainly great detail. But that right there, I think, is a large part of the issue here, is making sure that everybody's vote is counted, that it, again, takes place one day, not over the course of 30-some-odd days, like is clearly the case in California. It's completely ridiculous. And that, of course, opens up the doors to endless fraud. And again, in 2016, certainly in 2020, I have no doubt that Donald Trump won the state of California. They just don't want people to believe that a conservative, certainly politician, would win in such a state, let alone the mayor of Los Angeles in the case of Spencer Pratt, or at least, again, gain a great deal of votes, enough to usher in a runoff. But here's what Joe Lang said. He said, "Midterms are safe. Let me share why." He said, "We are watching a military operation that began back in 2017. Military is the only way. Trump and the military already knew the enemy's plans and have acted accordingly. There's a reason that Trump is posting the music from the end of the movie Sum of All Fears. Nessun dorma. None shall sleep is what it means. Says we are reaching the end game where accountability happens in an instant. I keep telling people that everything is planned and timed. Do you think Trump doesn't know all about the cheating in California and that it's concentrated in Los Angeles? Do you think he hasn't planned for it? Do you think the new federal criminal investigations into the fraud in Los Angeles were just a reaction to what's happening? Or have they been planned for just this moment? Let me share some news that nobody in the media will tell you. The military has a long history of something that most people have forgotten: infiltration." And then he starts referencing Q posts here, and it's Q Drop 12 from October 30th of 2017, where it says military intelligence referenced above is the absolute biggest inside drop this board will ever receive. Now think about why Antifa plays right into the plan. Always ahead. Good guys are winning. The military infiltrated Antifa. And then there's Q Drop 4366 on May 31st of 2020, where it simply said Antifa mapping, quote unquote, started a long time ago. Joe Lang said, again, do you think it's just Antifa? Read this Q Drop carefully. It paints the picture of what the military has been engaged with in the past. The Anon posts some history of military intelligence working on U.S. soil and infiltrating insurgents groups along with state and local governments. Q Drop 28 from November 1st of 2017. It's a long one, but it's worth it here. It says, what must be completed to engage military intelligence over other three-letter agencies? During the 1950s and 60s, federal troops and federalized National Guard forces, accompanied by military intelligence personnel, were deployed to help integrate Southern schools and to help deal with civil disorders in Detroit in 1967 and other cities the following year after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Throughout this period, military intelligence units also continued to collect data on Americans at home who were suspected of involvement in subversive activities. In the late 1960s, the Pentagon compiled personal information on more than 100,000 politically active Americans in an effort to quell civil rights and anti-Vietnam War demonstrations and to discredit protesters. The Army used 1,500 plainclothes agents to watch demonstrations, infiltrate organizations, and spread disinformation. According to one report, the Army had at least one observer at every demonstration of more than 20 people. The Army's activities were summed up by Senator Sam Ervin, allegedly for the purpose of predicting and preventing civil disturbances which might develop beyond the control of state and local officials. Army agents were sent throughout the country to keep surveillance over the way the civilian population expressed their sentiments about government policies. In churches, on campuses, in classrooms, in public meetings. They took notes, tape recorded, and photographed people who dissented in thought, word, or deed. This included clergymen, editors, public officials, and anyone who sympathized with the dissenters. Now, little side note, I don't necessarily think that that's a good thing. Not by any stretch. Again, mass surveillance of Americans by government because they disagree with government. I mean, that's, that should be showing everybody who their real enemy is. But either way, again, it's serious, but with that aside, they went on and they said Trump has military intelligence infiltrate Antifa and all the dissenting local governments. Always 5 steps ahead, please be true. And then they said, well done, picture being painted. Military intelligence has a long history of infiltrating insurgency groups. They haven't just mapped out Antifa. They've also infiltrated state and local governments and mapped out the fraudulent election system. The mapping, quote unquote, began in 2018. The new investigations into fraud in LA are following a path already mapped out. Counterinsurgency may be defined as comprehensive civilian and military efforts taken to simultaneously defeat and contain insurgency and address its root causes, quote unquote. So again, it would seem odd that the head of the executive branch, who is the head of the military, wouldn't be able to again see this fraud, which he can, and he does, and he's been talking about it for years. But to then not put the military in place in order to catch this fraud. Again, let them engage in the crime because they always think they're going to get away with it. They think it'll work out for them in the end. And then when you catch them again in real time, that's just a bigger net that all of these individuals just willingly fall into on purpose, blindly, or again, they just don't care. They don't think they'll ever get held accountable. And then all of a sudden the net gets pulled, and because you've let the net stay out there longer, you end up catching more of them. Again, I've brought up that example before, but it's quite possible, again, that that's exactly what's happening here in this case, certainly when it comes to California. There's also this chart which someone put together, which is rather well done, and it's describing the California gubernatorial race, where, again, Steve Hilton has the lead, albeit barely, with Javier Becerra apparently now in second, when I don't think he was to begin with. But once the ballot started being dropped after Election Day, then all of a sudden, again, as one would expect, Steve Hilton was still receiving increased votes, but so was everybody else, and everybody else just happened to be receiving far more than him. But Tom Steyer apparently picked up 220,545 votes all at once. Again, Steve Hilton is picking up a great deal of votes as well throughout this entire process. In fact, he's not necessarily receiving more votes. Javier Becerra seems to be receiving more ballot dumps than Steve Hilton is, certainly by a little bit anyway. A few thousand, whatever it is, 10, 20, some odd thousand here. But Tom Steyer, again, just randomly picks up 220,545 votes all at once, when he wasn't, again, getting that hardly at all previously. So, I don't know. It's a 21% increase in voter ballot dumps just for him alone. While Javier Becerra and Steve Hilton, again, are roughly around 26.4%, 26.8% in vote increases. It's just, I mean, again, a person doesn't have to be a numbers expert to see the highly irregular actions here. But again, once you stretch out counting votes over the course of weeks after an actual election, that should tell everybody again that you have immediate fraud. Now, here in Ohio, we have a particular House bill that has advanced now to the Senate, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sorry, the Senate passed it. There we go. It's a constitutional amendment having to do again with voter ID. And it's now moved its way to the House. This is House Bill 458. And again, basically what this does is it eliminates a great deal of things which are fantastic. The problem is that it still leaves the door open for mail-in ballots to not be proven to have voter ID affiliated with them. So I'm going to let Marcel Sturbich, who ran for Secretary of State, describe this just a little bit further, and then I'll mention a few other details affiliated with it. Again, if there's a mail-in ballot that takes place in the state of Ohio, you still have to fill out a great deal of information with it. For example, as we all know with, again, in-person voting, you have to have, again, a physical ID, an unexpired photo ID, and you have to show this, of course, at the polls in order to vote. That's rather common sense. They, of course, match your signature. You have to sign every single time. They look at it. They ask you to verify your address, the whole thing. That takes place every single time you vote in person. With mail-in, what you have to do is you have to include your driver's license ID number, the last 4 digits of your social security number, or, and it's not and, it's or, a copy of a photo ID. Therein lies the problem right there, is that the numbers are enough. So you don't need to actually provide a copy of your actual identification, which means you can have fraud right there. And it says, again, you do not have to mail a physical photo ID every time you use your driver's license number or your last 4 digits of your social security number. What they're banking on, and certainly what, again, a person who's questioning this process would ask, is they would say, well, do those numbers get checked every single time that the vote is cast? That when a ballot counter opens up that envelope, are they matching the social security number with a person who actually exists within the state, or again, is an actual resident of the state who's legally voting who hasn't voted already? Or is this ballot fraudulent because the numbers don't match or the person has already voted before? Again, I understand the importance of clearly needing a valid photo ID and a copy of that. And that right there is exactly what Marcel Sturbich was pushing for and is pushing for. Because this constitutional amendment, what it does is it makes it also very difficult to go back into the voter laws and change them. That's sort of the other stipulation regarding all of this. So again, with in-person voting, you have to provide a photo ID. If you're voting early at your Board of Elections, then you have to provide a photo ID. But if you're voting by mail, you don't. You have to fill out the correct numbers. And of course, again, if things don't check out and you have an ethical person on the other end counting the votes, they get to not count your vote if you don't have the right numbers in place, or again, there seems to be a serious irregularity. But again, providing a copy of your actual photo ID, I think, would be a very good thing front and back. That way you can verify exactly who you are, where you live, and that this is the only time that you voted in a specified election. Anyway, here's Marcel Sturbich describing this and his concerns with it in 3, 2, 1.
Here, 2 things. We're talking about equality and fairness of standards. That's one thing. You're applying the law unequally, and you've devised different voter categories for how you're going to do basic voter verification. The second thing we're talking about is a basic security measure. It is not overly burdensome or overbearing to ask someone who isn't even going to go to the polling location to make a front and back copy of their state-issued identity credential, put it in the actual absentee envelope. Now, the argument that people are making against this is that it's burdensome for a portion of the population. Yet here we are today where you can literally create copies of whatever you need using mobile scanners on your phone. You don't even need a Kinko's at this point. So we haven't even gotten to the point where we're able to do that. Now, some are going to argue, are going to make this case, and they're going to say, well, we're already providing the last four of a social security number and a driver's license, and we're signing it. And that should be enough basic security measures, right? Here's the problem with that. Today, a level of personal identity theft is so high that you can acquire, you can buy people's driver's license, social security numbers, and you can certainly impersonate their signatures. And so it's not enough to not even have this basic measure.
See, this is the next step in the healthcare, Medicare, Medicaid fraud, Somali fraud, all of that stuff that's happening all across the United States, is these individuals are not just engaging in Medicare, Medicaid, XYZ fraud. They're engaging in voter fraud because upwards of 80 to 90%, even Fox News ran this headline the other day, even 80 to 90% of those individuals filled out their H-1B visas illegally. They're fraudulent. And they were just being accepted, one after the other, which means those individuals are voting illegally. Again, this is where you can see this at face value. You've heard me mention the name Anissa Liban endless times, the Substacks I've written about this woman, who sits on the school board of Westerville City Schools in Westerville, Ohio. There's no way that a female Somali wins 16,000 plus some odd votes, more votes than anybody in the history of that election, unless there's voter fraud. I mean, I understand there's virtue signalers out there, and I'm not a racist. I'm going to vote for her, and I'll tell everybody I voted for her, and I'll prove to everybody I'm not a racist as a result. I mean, I understand that there's dummies out there that would do that, and they would vote legally. However, in the Somali community, they circle the wagons, which means how many of those individuals are actual legal citizens? I would venture to guess very few. You can't vote in our country legally if you're an illegal. That should go without saying. But these individuals don't care about breaking the law. They're brazen about it. They'll admit it. They'll admit quid pro quo, as she has in the past. She'll admit circling the wagons around one another and making sure that we all support one another in the Somali community and blah, blah, blah. This is what the federal government also has to look at. It's illegal Somali voting. And then, of course, you have to follow that path right to where those individuals hold particular positions. Where are they sitting where they were illegally voted into? Well, in this particular case, it's a school board. Again, all you have to do is track down exactly where these individuals were receiving money. And if one entity, two or even more, which there's no way it's just one entity, was illegally obtaining money and then laundering that money to a school board election, then the individual who received the money, who is now sitting on the school board, i.e. Anissa Liban or anybody like her, then those individuals again have to be detained. You have to charge them with the crime. You're taking in laundered money from fraudulent organizations. Again, she herself is a part of that Somali Community Link organization up there, which again stole COVID money. Upwards of $10 million, if memory serves, if not $2 million. It was somewhere in there. But point is that when I hear Dr. Oz or Todd Blanche talking about this specifically in Ohio, I mean, I'm in the comments section screaming about Anissa Liban. Lock this woman up. And then, of course, question everybody who's around her, including all of the Somalis she hangs out with, the entire school board, the district as a whole. Plausible deniability will come into play. These people will be like, well, I had no idea. Well, they'll be lying. Those people will be lying. If they see an Anissa Liban or an individual like that show up, it's not because she's a woman, and it's not even because she's Somali. It's because there's noticing and there's a pattern here. And it's beyond obvious. Again, if you have nothing to hide, you wouldn't be screaming at people who are asking you questions, shutting down free speech, saying things like they say in their school board meetings, which is, you can't address any singular board member. They actually say that, again, in their board meetings, that you're not allowed to single out a single board member, that you have to speak to all of us, basically anonymously, as if we are all a whole. Well, if you're all a whole, then you're going to go down as a whole. You're not going to go down for individual actions. Again, guilt by association is a big deal. But if these people want to affiliate themselves with very irregular voting that at face value looks highly irregular, well, then you get to go down with them, and I'm all for it. But we need bigger arrests. We need more arrests. I'm glad that, some people are in jail. I'm all for it. But you got to turn these people over and figure out exactly, again, who they were giving money to. And then you have to track down these organizations. And then you have to look at Somalis in particular and Indians in particular. What elected positions do they hold now? And then, of course, where were they receiving their money? I've said it a million times, and again, wrote about it on Substack. You don't receive out-of-state donations for a school board position. You just don't. That doesn't happen. If I ran for school board, the only out-of-state donation that I would probably ever receive would be from a family member. It wouldn't be from dozens and dozens and dozens of so-called home health care organizations in Minneapolis, Minnesota, or Washington, or cab drivers in Washington State. That's absurd. At face value, that's highly suspicious. Because that's not what happens, again, with a school board position. And Franklin County, Ohio, as even they brought up, which is where Columbus is, which is where Westerville is, that accounts for 1/3 of the entire state's Medicare, Medicaid fraud. What they're not telling you is that it's Somali. By and large, it is race-based. These aren't gangs of white people going around and ripping people off. It's not. This is a strategy that has been taught to the so-called Somali community by left-wing liberals, some of which, of course, are white. But my point is that, again, they're all working together. It's a massive criminal racket. But you've just got to take that path a little bit further and see how much of that entire path you can expose, clean out, hold accountable, and arrest. And it doesn't matter if they're holding on to elected positions or not. If they broke the law, then they need to go to jail. Again, if and when the day comes when Anissa Liban gets arrested, I will drink champagne on the show. I promise. I certainly will. She's a high-profile individual, and she checks off a lot of boxes that a lot of people want to see individuals be held accountable. Certainly, again, the so-called titles that she has. Directly affiliated and now in charge of, again, Somali Community Link, which stole COVID money, hello, and then, of course, a sitting school board member who openly admitted to quid pro quo, received more votes than anybody else, and raised approximately $160,000 to then make $80K disappear. Give me a break. It's one red flag after another. It's so obvious. Anyway, all right. We'll cross our fingers on that one and hope that happens sooner rather than later. Anyway, let me move on to this now. The latest Substack is up. It is titled Accused Pedophile Principal Gets Promoted. Jason Merz, former Talawanda City Schools elementary principal in Oxford, Ohio, gets promoted to the Talawanda Middle School principal position. Now, I'm going to read through a part of this here, and I would encourage individuals, again, to bounce over and read it for yourself. I obtained these documents through an open records request. And again, as it turns out, Jason Merz has returned, of course, to Kramer Elementary School. Certainly, again, since, I believe, whenever, February, March, at the conclusion of the Title IX, which, again, school board members have not read in its entirety, and they certainly haven't read the unredacted version, which they have a legal responsibility to do. The simple reason that they wouldn't want to do it is, again, plausible deniability. They would prefer to just read, or at least have the superintendent tell them, that there was absolutely no wrongdoing, that there were no inconsistencies in anybody's interview or testimony by the Title IX investigator. And that as a result of all of that, because there was no other evidence, there was no security footage, there were no other witnesses, that the decision maker, of course, determined that they didn't have enough evidence to say that Title IX was violated or that Jason Merz did any of this. With that aside, most Title IX investigations that take place within schools have to do with this kind of violence. Staff member toward student violence. And as it turns out, most of that violence takes place on a sexual basis within a bathroom stall or within a bathroom or a locker room. Those are typically the environments where they occur. Certainly the vast majority of the time. But since being back at Kramer, even, in an interim role or whatever principal role he was holding, he still had the title principal. On May 22nd of this year, he emailed the superintendent, Ed Thoreau, and he's basically telling him that he would appreciate it if the interim principal, who has been there since Merz was under investigation, certainly for a great deal of time, this Mr. Pettit guy, that Mr. Pettit remain as the assistant principal. Because more students have quote-unquote needs, and we need more assistance in this building, and he's a professional, and the staff like him, and XYZ. So he sends this email out, again, to Ed Thoreau on May 22nd at 8:50 in the morning. And then Ed Thoreau responds 15 minutes later, and he says, quote, "Thank you, I absolutely understand the request. I also understand the need. You are the largest elementary school. I understand as well. We are, unfortunately, at a point where we are not certain of our budget constraints. Many new legislation items have been proposed. We have a carryover that will only last a small point in time if some to all of these new legislative items are passed. Too many unknowns." And then that was it. And again, I think Jason Merz responded and said, "Thank you." 6 days later, Ed Thoreau pens a large email to all of the board members, and he tells them that Jason Merz is not going to be the elementary school principal at Kramer Elementary anymore, but that he's going to be actually the middle school principal. Now, very quickly, the breakdown of this school district, albeit very small, is 1 high school, 3 elementary schools, and 1 middle school. So the only middle school that exists now in the district, which again takes in students from all 3 elementary schools, Jason Merz now, the accused pedophile, is going to be the principal of that building, and he's going to be in charge of the search committee who's looking for another assistant principal of that building. The question I have, of course, is this going to be an internal hire where they know Jason Merz and actually believe his side of the story and his involvement in any of this? Or is it going to be someone from the outside who has absolutely no idea what this guy allegedly did? Now, I say allegedly, but I think he did it. That's my opinion. Because there's ample evidence that it in fact happened, certainly from the child's unwavering testimony and specificity of that testimony. But this is the business, again, in a nutshell, as I say in the article. This is how a school district destroys itself. Because what they could have done, and they had just cause to do it, certainly in the state of Ohio, is regardless of the outcome of a Title IX investigation, you can fire the person who was investigated. You can choose to not rehire them. But what they did is they extended his contract for 5 years in the month of March, and then they gave him a pay raise. And now they've moved him. So let's ask that question. Why would they move him 5 days later, back in the end of May, again, a couple of weeks ago, when they thought, or when certainly Jason Merz himself thought that he was going to remain in the elementary school? What would cause such a move to actually take place? It would have to be a variety of things. Parental complaints, not wanting to send their kids to a school building where Jason Merz was going to be the principal. That certainly has happened. Of that, I'm certain. This is an open enrollment school district also, which means you have students who can immediately, or their parents rather, can immediately sign their kids up to attend a different elementary school, even so much so that they are allowed to leave the district and actually go to a separate district for their kids' education or indoctrination if they choose to. But it's basically like a first come, first serve kind of thing when it comes to inter-district open enrollment. You probably had a great deal of students, and certainly their parents, not wanting to send their kids to Kramer. Then again, you would have plenty of brainwashed parents who would send their children into a building where they knew that the principal was accused of sexually assaulting a minor in a bathroom stall while playing with himself at the same time, and restraining the minor in the bathroom stall. They'd be 100% fine with it. Cognitive dissonance is one hell of a drug. And it's amazing. And people have it. And I'll prove it to you a little bit later. But either way, he lays out this entire long reasoning for all of it. Again, it's descriptive, but he's not descriptive regarding Jason Merz. He simply says that the current middle school principal, who is a Dr. Pam Thurer, who should retire, she's old enough to retire, but isn't retiring, will be the new instructional leadership principal. This is a completely new position that never existed in the past that the superintendent is creating or attempting to create. And that her salary will be reduced from a 215-day contract to a 225-day contract. And then he says, Mr. Jason Merz will be the new middle school principal. He brings a wealth of experience, knowledge, and expertise. He's also worked in both elementary and secondary school systems, and he will bring forth his knowledge of elementary schools to the middle school. That's not a good thing. That isn't a good thing at all. Again, I have to mention this because it's too relevant. Most straight males, let alone straight males who are not attracted to minors, who are in the education business, don't lunge for an elementary principal position. They just don't do it. That position, by and large, is filled with females and gays. That's the fact of the matter. You don't have to like it. I certainly don't. I think the position itself is beyond strange. You've heard me say it before. I think administrators, by and large, are useless. I think they're useless positions. They shouldn't even exist. Somebody has to hold the adults in the building accountable, but when the people running the building aren't holding themselves accountable, let alone anybody else, there's going to be a problem. So again, with that aside, just from a sexual proclivity angle, most straight men, certainly again, ones who are already in the education business, don't go, you know what I want to do? I want to be an elementary school principal because I just love all those kids. Most people don't do that. That's why that position is usually relegated to women. Unfortunately, it's also relegated to gay men in open interviews where clearly the man is flamboyant. And apparently that's not a problem for anybody. Nobody seems to think that's a big deal. But either way, again, the amount of money that's being wasted here on a brand new position to get rid of a bad middle school principal who apparently no one liked, which also cost the assistant principal of that same middle school to quit. He was brought in, I believe, a year ago. Teachers apparently liked him, and then he quit because he was like, if I tried to do something, I got shut down. I got shut down by this Pam Thurer gal, who was the principal of the middle school, and then, of course, I would get shut down by the superintendent, so he said, F it, I'm leaving. So you have a high turnover rate in this district also. And now, of course, you have the movement of an accused pedophile from an elementary position to a middle school principal position, where approximately a third of the school's, I should say the district's students, elementary students, were at Kramer Elementary School when Jason Merz was the principal. The other element, too, of middle schools and the difference between them and elementary schools is middle schools have locker rooms. So not only is this individual, again, now going to have access to locker rooms, he's also going to continue to have access to the security footage within the middle school, which means if he wants to make something disappear, he can make something disappear, just like he probably did within Kramer Elementary. Why wouldn't he? What is he going to do? Leave the security footage of him assaulting a child in a bathroom stall? Following a student into a bathroom? He wouldn't just leave that footage available. He would immediately go back to his office and delete it. I've heard that staff members have requested particular transfers. I've heard that individuals are quitting because, again, they don't want to be affiliated with the district and they don't want to be affiliated with Jason Merz. I've said it before, and individuals have said this about me who work in the district who detest me, and that's 100% fine because they're completely retarded. But they've openly said that I've said on my show, which is true, that I'll make these people unemployable. What they don't know is that they don't need any help from me. They're already doing it themselves. Every move that they make in all of their actions that they engage in within this district, unprofessionally, and that's putting it mildly, is career kryptonite. It's destroying their careers because when you look up Talawanda City Schools in Oxford, Ohio, on any search engine or AI platform, you come across my articles, you come across their actions, you come across news stories, federal lawsuits, unprofessionalism out the wazoo, you name it. It's all of it. And it's them. It's not me. I don't work there. It's not me doing anything. It's me highlighting the unprofessionalism of them. That's career suicide. People will get passed over, and of course, people won't even want to work here as a result of, again, doing a basic internet search of what goes on in the district because it looks poisonous. From the outside, it looks poisonous. So regarding the creation of this new position, he needs board approval. He'll get it because, again, there's only one ethical person on the school board. But he openly says, well, don't worry, we have the money for this administrator who's probably going to make at least 6 figures, which is ridiculous. And again, they're giving Jason Merz a promotion. They're giving him a pay raise, and he has a 5-year contract extension. Now, once the superintendent sent out an email to the district staff, specifically Kramer Elementary, all the administrators within the district and in the middle school as well. He said the following, and this was, again, approximately 6 days later after that Jason Merz initial article where Jason Merz apparently thought that he was still going to be the Kramer principal. It was on May 29th, Friday, at 11:01 a.m., and he said, "Good morning. We are notifying you of some administrative changes that will impact your buildings. We will send an email to the district in a few minutes, and we will not send a community announcement until a board decision following the June board meeting. Please see the attachment." And I'll read you the attachment here in a second. He said, "We will continue to work on filling all open positions. We will make announcements when the fillings are completed and approved. You will see anticipated and regular postings. We used multiple factors in making this decision: observation, needs, climate and culture, scores, data, evaluations, surveys, etc." And then he says, "I know rumors may start. I wanted to get ahead of the rumors. If you have questions, please let me know. In education, Dr. Ed Thoreau, EDD." Okay. Well, he's educationally disabled, no doubt about that. That's not what EDD stands for, but it kind of is. Anyway, here's the problem. He's openly admitting again that rumors are going to start. Why would you openly admit that? What rumors will start? If you're claiming that you have these observations, needs, as you say, which is rather vague, climate and culture, scores, data, evaluations, surveys, etc., I'd like to get a hold of those and figure out exactly what it shows. I bet it's far more simple than that. I bet people don't want to work around Jason Merz. Ladies and gentlemen, elementary school children without a history of discipline do not make accusations like this. Specific, detailed accusations. They just don't. And what this entire case has shown people is that the entire system will circle the wagons around an adult at the expense of a child, the child's family, and the accusations as a whole, and defend the adult to the bitter end. Now, I didn't include these in the article, but I wanted to read some of these comments because they're disgusting. I'm not on Facebook, but these were sent to me. This dated back to the end of February when I read that letter from the superintendent, who immediately came out and said that Jason Merz was going to return and that everybody was excited and blah, blah, blah. Well, no, not everybody's excited at all. But unfortunately, lots of brainwashed people are, rather, who have absolutely no access to any evidence whatsoever and certainly don't want to read about the specificity of the case. Here's a Nancy Holschult, that's her real name. She said, "Thank you for sharing this letter," basically that initial memo from back in February. Katie Phelps Bray, "I hope this document gets more press than the false allegations, and I hope that Jason is adequately compensated, for the stress and attack on his character." Then you have and only 4 people liked that post. Again, these people talk in an echo chamber, and they don't understand that the vast majority of people don't agree with them. A Monica Dully Blevins said, "Never a doubt that he was going to be cleared. It's a sick world that we live in. I cannot even imagine the stress this has caused him and his family." Only one person liked that post. Notice how they don't talk about the child, nor the child's family. It's just, well, I know this person because I sent my kids there, so any negative story in their direction, it must be a lie. That's their default setting. And Amy Duval Phelps said, "Finally, thank goodness, all my love." Okay. And then there's another one here. A Leanne Schilster, I don't know. They said, "Thankfully, this nightmare is over." Nobody liked that post. And then this one. And this is from a Kelly Spivey, who is the former superintendent of the district, who apparently, I don't know if they're retired now or they used to work after this district in a neighboring school district called Edgewood, but they said the following: "Jason and Molly," his wife, "are among the greatest people I know and have worked with." Only 3 people liked that post. I'm telling you, the humble pie that these individuals are going to be eating, either in this lifetime or the next, is going to be astounding. Michelle Harris Fitzgerald said, "Kramer Elementary staff never wavered in their loyalty to Jason. I, as his friend and employee, would have died on that hill to defend him. We are anxiously awaiting his return. We've missed him desperately." 5 people enjoyed that particular post, apparently. And this is, I guess, a teacher in the building. A Michelle Harris Fitzgerald. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, she just outed herself. That's the name of a teacher who won't believe a child, but will believe a fellow employee with no evidence. And then a Diane Bowling said, "So glad this is over. Never doubted Jason's character. Such a great family," unquote. Now here's the memo that was sent out to the staff, the middle school and Kramer staff, again from the superintendent, Ed Thoreau, a couple of weeks back. It says the following, quote, "Dear TMS and Kramer staff, in taking a holistic look at the Talawanda School District, there will be administration changes to your buildings for next school year." Now, keep in mind how many people this is going to piss off, and it's going to piss off a ton of people, which it already has, I'm certain. "We have been working together to determine the best solutions for some of the challenges we have faced. My goal is to notify you first before letting the rest of the district and community know of these changes for the 26-27 school year. Dr. Pamela Thurer will be the new instructional leadership principal pending board approval. This is a new role and addition to our administrative team. Kramer's students population exceeds 500 students. Additional homes will be built within the Kramer attendance area. I don't know what he's talking about there. Bogan's student population continues to grow too. We have heard the need for additional administrative support through surveys, in-person meetings, administrative requests, and other communications. This new position will focus on Kramer first, but also work with the other district administrators as needed. Dr. Thur brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise in curriculum instruction, assessment, educational systems, and student staff needs. Mr. Jason Merz will be the new Talawanda Middle School principal. This is not a new position. No kidding. A transition plan is being developed. Currently, the middle school staff are working on round 1 interviews for the assistant principal position. Principal Merz will be involved in the hiring decision for the assistant principal vacancy in round 2 interviews. Principal Merz brings a wealth of Talawanda experience with both secondary and elementary administrator experience. He possesses strong skill sets in curriculum instruction, assessment, educational systems, and student staff needs. Okay, real quick. It's not over yet, but side note. In this situation, they would have to make the hire internal for an assistant principal position next to Jason Merz, which means that person is going to be the dumbest human on the face of the planet, because who in their right mind would want to work next to an accused pedophile? The accusation alone is damning. The investigation is more damning, which means you would have the most gullible human being as the assistant principal working right along Jason Merz. And Jason Merz, since of course he's a part of picking this individual, he's going to pick a sycophant. He's not going to pick an outside person who's done a Google search on this guy, which means the hire has to come from inside. It's not going to be an outside hire. Memo goes on, says, we will post for an anticipated Kramer Elementary principal position vacated by Principal Merz soon. Our HR department will work with staff to post interview and recommend a person to the Board of Education for approval. We also will develop a transition plan for Kramer too. My team and I believe that these moves, as well as other changes, will positively impact both TMS and Kramer and are in the best interests of students and programs. Well, he's wrong on that. You don't move an accused pedophile from one building to another to oversee more students. That's legally reckless. It's highly unprofessional. Goes on, says we will send a district letter out to all staff soon. We will notify the community after the Board of Education decision. Our plan is to provide the information to our Board of Education at the June board meeting. We know by posting an anticipated Kramer principal position, there would be questions. Again, more information will be provided after the June Board of Education meeting, so stay tuned. Have a great summer in education, Dr. Ed Thoreau. And of course, the HR director got the same thing too. Now, I elaborate a little bit more toward the end of the Substack about professionalism and what this actually means, but I want to hone in on one last point, which was a secondary edit that I made to the article. Jason Merz has an active X account. And I said the following here at the end as I included these pictures that Jason Merz himself puts out on his X account. Now you have to again examine what I discussed earlier here, which was elementary school principal positions usually invite a couple different kinds of people. Closeted gays, women, openly gay individuals, or predators of the like, of the sort. Typically straight white men, or straight men in general, are not going to look to become an elementary principal. It's just not what happens. There are some positions that exist, of course, within this profession of education, so to speak, if you want to call it a profession. It isn't anymore. It's an embarrassment, and it's a criminal organization, but there are positions that exist within that attract particular kinds of people. On his X account, he has pictures of himself dressed very strangely for a straight man. For example, at the top of the Substack article, there's a picture of him wearing a tutu. Straight men don't wear tutus. They don't do it as jokes. They don't do it in school environments. And they don't do it around children. Unless, of course, you're trying to desensitize yourself and other people to your proclivities, and you're slowly watering down who you actually are in the public eye. I couldn't help but think of, say, for example, a Bruce Jenner. During the Kardashians show, over the course of time, Bruce Jenner would slowly start to dress like a woman. He stopped dressing more like a man. He was getting more facial work done. He was wearing more makeup, and he was dressing more like a female. This was gradual. It occurred again over the course of time, and then before you know it, now look at what Bruce Jenner has become. In this particular case, here's what I wrote. And again, there are plenty of pictures here, because Jason Merz himself put these pictures on his own X account, which is highly unprofessional. But unfortunately, in this business, there are endless people who would openly say it's not unprofessional. That he's making himself inviting for children, that he's making the environment fun, that he's joking around and having a good time. This is the problem with the position and what the position has become. That's not what the position is. Elementary school principals should not be dressing differently, certainly not wearing what women would wear in an environment like this, even as a joke. That's not professional. He's really not even supposed to be talking with students, not meeting with them, not eating lunch with them, not pulling them out of class and talking with them. He's not supposed to be doing that. As a building principal, the reason you get paid as much as you do is because you're there to manage adults. That's the job. That is literally the description. Unfortunately, the entire business has been perverted so much that now the phrase relationship building is taking on a completely different meaning and a definition, and even again become the norm. That you need to build relationships and you need to communicate with students because it'll decrease violence and decrease bullying and get everybody to be compliant and blah, 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 blah. And that's just not true. He should be managing adults. That's the job. You make sure that the adults are doing what they're legally obligated to do. So I said the following here again regarding his choice of dress. I said, quote, "If you see the pictures throughout this article of Jason Merz and some of his co-workers, which he openly displays on his X account, and you have no doubt about what you are seeing, this approach of wearing different outfits that seem inappropriate to most can actually be common among some sexual predators, commonly referred to as desensitization or normalization. Predators often use gradual exposure to make inappropriate or boundary-pushing elements seem ordinary over time. This is well documented in child sexual grooming and adult predatory behavior, typically applied to touch, sexual topics, or boundary violations with victims, such as eating lunch with minors, meeting with them, pulling them out of class when they aren't in trouble, placing their hands on them, isolating them, conversing with them without other adults present, taking on other roles that are not typical of the specified position, etc. It can also extend to altering one's own appearance or presentation to reduce suspicion, lower social defenses in a workplace or public setting, or make future advances seem less out of character, quote unquote. It's also referred to as impression management or strategic self-presentation. In social psychology, this involves renewing one's image over time to influence perceptions. A sexual predator might do this deceptively, maintaining a straight facade, quote unquote, initially, while shifting presentation to test reactions, blend in, gain trust, or normalize a sexual interest without immediate backlash, unquote. Again, get on the Substack and look at the way that the dude dresses. You couldn't pay me to wear a tutu. You couldn't pay me enough money. You couldn't pay me to wear a tutu in a school building as a paid school employee. I don't give a shit what building it is, elementary, middle, or high. Doesn't matter. I don't even care if there was an activity taking place. That doesn't matter either. It's not what you do. It isn't how you dress. It's not how you carry yourself professionally in any building. But this is what a person would do when they're trying to normalize their own proclivities. And they do it step by step. It's gradual. It can be imagery. It can be instruction. It can be something that they say, a place where they go, something they do. Now, I'm going to mention some rumors here. Again, superintendent wants to talk about rumors. I'll give you a few. Rumor has it that Jason Merz enjoys drag shows. Based on the way that he's dressed in these pictures, would that surprise anybody? I heard that a year ago. That the ex-husband of a woman has been to a drag show, at least one, with Jason Merz before. Do straight men go to drag shows? I'm asking the question. I've also heard rumors that his wife is divorcing him. Again, rumors. I don't know that for a fact. I don't know these people, but I've heard those rumors. Why would the wife of a straight man divorce him after a 10-month-long Title IX investigation where a child details him being assaulted in a bathroom stall by his school principal, who happens to be the husband of an ex-Talawanda employee who was also a school principal of another elementary school in town? Seems strange. Again, it's a rumor. I don't know if it's true or it isn't. Again, as I also say in the article, who on earth could take him seriously? Working in a middle school now, with him as your principal and your primary evaluator, among numerous minors, with locker rooms present and the whole thing, while he's been spending the vast majority of his career as an elementary school principal, now entering a middle school, which is a far tougher environment, which means he's going to be inserting himself in disciplinary issues with other minors. This is going to get worse. This will get worse. This will not get better, and this is going to blow up in endless people's faces. The district could have avoided all of this, but whatever comes down the path now, they have it coming. Now, I'll also say this, just as a little side note off of the Jason Merz story here. Remember Joseph Hall? Me bringing up that particular name, a Dr. Joseph A. Hall. This individual, again, was hired by Talawanda a year ago. And as it turns out, this individual lied on their resume about their previous employment, where they had actually, the year prior, had been placed on paid administrative leave from an educational position that they held in an educational services center in a neighboring county. But long story short with him is that, again, he was soliciting sex from a minor, that he was on an anonymous gay website where you would meet up with anonymous individuals and then agree to meet at a particular location and then have sex. He walked into this particular apartment or home or whatever it was to have sex with a minor, and then turned around and realized that nobody was there and then apparently left, but was caught on security footage touching himself and the whole thing while he was inside of the residence. He was trespassed from the property. He admitted to the police that he was there, again, to have gay sex with someone, but didn't tell the police that the individual was 17 years old. Talawanda, of course, didn't do a basic internet search of this person, and they ended up hiring him. And then, of course, this information all came out. I wrote about it on Substack. A lot of people publicly were sharing this information. And then, of course, Talawanda reacted, and then they ended up cutting him loose because they claimed, again, that he lied to them about what he had been detained for initially or questioned by police for. But in that questioning, he ended up admitting that he was there to meet a 17-year-old, but he was there to meet them to basically, again, buy something off of Facebook Marketplace or something like that. Either way, he was lying. And as it turns out, again, I can't find that there's an arrest record of him beyond, again, him initially being detained and questioned a couple of years ago, but I do know for a fact that his Ohio State teaching license has been suspended. So that's good. He can't be in the education business now, at least for God knows how long. I don't know exactly how long the suspension lasts, but all of his licenses, the ones that he particularly held, integrated business, mild, moderate, intervention specialist, and a principal licensure have all been suspended. So that's a good thing. He won't be in the business anymore. Certainly, again, for some length of time. Don't know how long the suspension lasts, but either way, this is exactly what due diligence leads to. It's some semblance of accountability here, which is good. Again, independent journalism can get this done. Collective communication for independent journalism is what can get this done. I, of course, filed complaints. I'm sure that certainly led to this and certainly helped lead to this. The articles, at least 2 that I wrote regarding this particular individual. So there you go. But again, it's not just individuals and collective individuals who are showing concern about particular hires that are being made because of particular individuals. It ultimately boils down to the actions of those individuals. It's those illegal actions and those unprofessional actions that lead to consequences. So it's some kind of a consequence in this particular case, but again, that's a good thing. Again, I'll link the Substack article having to do with Jason Merz, the recent one here, in the description below if you're interested in checking that out. Okay, moving on. Cicely Hellickson sent this my way, and this kind of fits right in, I think. Certainly describes the, zero return on investment when you're trying to manage all of this gay stuff within American schools. This was from Zero Hedge on Friday, and it said, University of Oregon grapples with budget crisis after years of woke excess. It says that it appears, rather, that being unrelentingly woke means that you need fewer dormitories. The University of Oregon is facing a major budget crisis and will cut $65 million from its budget and close dorms due to low enrollment. That growing crisis, however, did not stop Oregon from burning almost $500,000 fighting against free speech. It also did not induce its faculty to offer greater intellectual diversity and tolerance to prospective students. Oregon is a cautionary tale for a generation of academic social warriors, but also an opportunity for those who want to restore balance in higher education. It's long been an example of academic orthodoxy. It says, while most state schools begrudgingly yield to First Amendment demands and often better free speech alternatives to private universities, Oregon is known as a hardened silo for the far left in teaching. Shouldn't shock anybody. Again, this is what's causing them to face massive deficits. And this is also, I should say, communism in a nutshell. This is exactly what these individuals who work in these environments are willing to do. They're willing to burn their budget based on, again, their own false ideologies. Emphasis on the word false. It says the following here. It says also, again, regarding a lot of this, it says a Georgetown study recently found that only 9% of law school professors identify as conservatives at the top 50 law schools, most identical to the percentage of Trump voters found in the new poll. There is little evidence that faculty members are interested in changing this culture or creating greater diversity at schools. In places like North Carolina State University, a study found that Democrats outnumbered Republicans 20-1. Yeah. It's not going to get better in these environments. Again, they don't mind if they rule over the ashes. They don't mind if they burn the place to the ground and they have no money. As long as they get to dress up weird and have weird conversations that, again, aren't going to lead to any job attainment or any qualification for future employment, well, then keep playing all your gay games. It's just not going to work. It's not a good business model. You would think that people would figure this out by now, but again, they're going to dig in like ticks. And individuals, again, aren't going to want to spend Their hard-earned money, certainly not parents, let alone undergraduates, with massive student debt, to enter these particular environments where they're not going to leave with anything tangible other than debt. Okay, now on to this. Two more things here. First, I came across this website, highly disturbing. Talk about the wireless body area network and a complete abandonment of everybody's Fourth Amendment rights. This is a group that is called Leonardo, and the website is leonardocompany-us.com. And here's what the About section says. Leonardo U.S. Cyber and Security Solutions, LLC, originates, designs, and develops advanced technology products, systems, and solutions that stand out for their excellent performance and reliability. The license plate recognition line of business designs manufactures and deploys highly sophisticated camera systems specifically designed to read and analyze license plates for interdiction, investigations, access control, parking, and tolling. It says the critical communications line of business delivers DMR, TETRA, and P25 solutions to utility, transportation, logistics, and public safety organizations throughout North America. Leonardo U.S. Cyber and Solutions LLC has capabilities to draw upon Leonardo's full catalog of offerings in security, transport, defense and space, and information technology. In this framework, Leonardo U.S. Cyber and Security Solutions LLC's skills represent both a dedicated offering in their own right as well as acting in a supporting role to introduce empowering technology infrastructure. This is mass surveillance, ladies and gentlemen. They are headquartered in Greensboro, North Carolina. And on their website, again, at the very top of it, they have what's called signal trace investigative evidence beyond plate reads. They have a video that lasts 1 minute and 34 seconds. There's no real audio, it's just text, but here's what it says. It says, think of all the electronic devices that people travel with. Smartphones, they say, watches, earphones, fitness trackers, infotainment systems, and then it says, what if law enforcement could identify suspects by the electronic devices they use? They can. They, of course, start to show all of these devices on poles. Signal trace, for example, captures unique signals emitted from each device that you're carrying on your person or in your car, including your car itself, and creates a digital fingerprint for devices that routinely travel together. Again, not good. When used along with Leonardo's license plate readers, another camera that's, again, installed on endless power posts everywhere, it says each digital fingerprint with a plate number through common time stamps. It says this digital fingerprint correlated with vehicle data indicates where you've been and where you're going, and if multiple suspects are traveling together. All data collected by Signal Trace and LPR systems is stored in the Enterprise Operations Center where investigators can query and analyze it. Probably also manipulate it if they want. In-depth query filters reveal intel can aid investigations on date and time ranges, vehicle make, type and color, location, and digital fingerprint identification. Investigators can see the number of times individuals and vehicles associated with the digital fingerprints and LPR reads were detected. And then it says, and where, and there's a pause, my apologies, and where Signal Trace provides evidence vital to a multitude of critical missions. They find missing persons, locating suspects and eyewitnesses, combat trafficking, aid homeland security, any mission involving a vehicle. Leonardo. Find out more at leonardocompany-us.com/LPR. At the bottom of their website, they have other related products. Again, all mass surveillance. They have the ELSAG or LSAG Mobile Plate Hunter. It's a camera that basically gets installed on top of an automobile, and you can just drive around and have it constantly record everybody's license plates. Automobiles, make, model, people in the car, the whole thing. They have LSAG fixed place hunters, which are cameras, again, fixed at specific locations, apparently. They have an LSAG solar street sentry. Again, it's a giant solar panel with cameras on it also, surveilling everybody. They have an LSAG radar trailers and message boards, showing, of course, your speed and all of that, and there are cameras affiliated with those as well. And then the LSAG video plate hunter, just another camera, again, that attaches to a power post or a crossing light or something along those lines. Beyond disturbing. It's basically a way for them to, again, either frame somebody or catch a real criminal or make something up if they want to, but it is a surveillance state being built around us. There is no doubt about that. Hence the kill switches within future automobiles. They'll be able to use all of these and then, of course, cut the switch on an automobile that they're tracking down, and they seem to think that that's not going to have any deadly consequences whatsoever. I'm certain it will. That's not going to be a good thing. All right, I'll end with this. I came across this on Substack. This is interesting, little history lesson here. I didn't know this individual, let alone their history, but rather interesting development, certainly from a health standpoint. It says the following here. It says, in 1925, a Russian engineer placed a copper ring around a dying plant. The tumor disappeared. Every other plant in the experiment died. His technology was used in hospitals across Europe until he was killed in New York in 1942. His name was Georgy Lakhovsky. He proposed a theory so dangerous that it had to be erased from medical history. Every living cell is a miniature oscillator. It vibrates at its own specific frequency. When a cell is healthy, it vibrates at a natural resonant frequency. When it becomes diseased, the frequency drops. Cancer, infection, degeneration, all of them are frequency disorders. In 1925, Lakhovsky conducted an experiment at the Salpêtrière Hospital in Paris. If I'm saying that correctly, probably not. He inculcated geranium plants with cancer-producing bacteria. All plants develop tumors. Around one single plant, he placed a simple, open-ended copper ring, 30 centimeters in diameter, nothing else. No electricity, no chemicals. Within weeks, the plant with the copper ring shed its tumor completely and grew taller and stronger than it had ever been before. Every other plant in the experiment died. The copper ring was acting as an antenna. It was capturing the full spectrum of cosmic frequencies and feeding them back to the plant cells. The cells retuned themselves to their natural oscillation. The disease could not survive in a cell vibrating at its correct frequency. Lakhovsky then built the multi-wave oscillator. It used two concentric antennas driven by a Tesla coil to generate a broad spectrum of electromagnetic frequencies simultaneously. The idea was simple. Flood the body with every possible frequency, and each cell will naturally resonate with the one it needs to heal. By the 1930s, his machines were being used in hospitals across France, Italy, and Sweden. Doctors reported recoveries from advanced cancers, severe arthritis, and chronic infections. Patients who had been given weeks to live walked out of clinics. In 1941, Lakhovsky brought his technology to New York. He began treating patients at a major hospital with extraordinary results. In 1942, at the age of 72, Lakhovsky was struck by a car in New York City and died shortly after. Immediately following his death, every multi-wave oscillator was removed from American hospitals. His research was labeled quackery. His name was deleted from medical literature. A man whose machines was healing patients in European hospitals, for over a decade, was hit by a car and erased from history within months. The frequency of a healing human cell is between 62 and 72 megahertz. When it drops to 58 megahertz, cold symptoms appear. At 42 megahertz, cancer begins. At 25 megahertz, you have death. Your body is not a chemical machine. It's an electrical instrument playing a frequency. Disease is not an invasion. It is a cell that forgot its song. They did not silence Lakovisky because his science was wrong. They silenced him because a copper ring costs nothing, and chemotherapy costs $150,000 and still kills, unquote. Again, I had no idea about the individual. I knew about the benefits of copper, and I knew about the existence, of course, of electromagnetism, and how frequency, of course, has everything to do with both our health and our death. But again, you probably already knew about that, but I just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention, thought it was very cool, and yeah. The cure for disease and the cure for illness exists, and it is frequency, as even Tesla said. If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration, unquote. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll leave it there. Thanks for listening as always. Feel free and check out that Substack article in the description below if you are interested, and I will catch you on Wednesday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.